Have the LA Kings locked up their goalie of the near future? That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we're on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. Also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We actually have some LA Kings news from over the weekend, with the Kings possibly signing their goalie of the near future. I will now read from the LA Kings official press release, at least in part. The Los Angeles Kings have signed goaltender Erik Portillo to a 3-year contract worth an average annual value of $753,333 through the 2026-27 season. Portillo, 23, recently completed his first season of professional hockey with the Ontario Reign, the Kings' American Hockey League affiliate, posting a 24-11-3 record with a 2.50 goals against average and a .918 save percentage with 2 shutouts in 39 games. Among rookie netminders, Portillo's .918 save percentage and .250 goals against average placed 4th and 6th respectively in the AHL, while his 24 victories were the most by a rookie goaltender in Reign history. Portillo appeared in 8 Calder Cup playoff contests, posting a 5-3 record with a 2.16 goals against average and a .916 save percentage with 1 shutout, while allowing 3 goals on 108 shots in his first 4 playoff outings. Prior to turning pro, the 6'6", 220-pound netminder played 3 seasons of college hockey at the University of Michigan. During his junior season in 2022-23, Portillo posted a 25-11-2 record in 38 NCAA games to help Michigan to a second consecutive Big Ten Conference Tournament championship and a Frozen Four berth. His 25 wins were the second most among Big Ten goaltenders and third among all NCAA netminders. The native of Gothenburg, Sweden, Portillo's best season came during his sophomore year in 2021-22, where he led the nation in saves. His 31-10-1 record, 2.14 goals against average, and .926 save percentage earned him nominations for both the Mike Richter Award and Big Ten Goalie of the Year. In 3 NCAA seasons with the Wolverines, Portillo accumulated a record of 60-22-3 with 2.49 goals against average and .918 save percentage with 3 shutouts. He was originally drafted by the Buffalo Sabres in the 3rd round, 67th overall of the 2019 NHL draft. All right, so let's begin with the contract that the Kings signed Erik Portillo to. He gets a 3-year deal worth a total of $2,349,999. He will make $783,333 per season. However, the first year of his contract is a 2-way deal, with the final 2 years 1-way contracts. So that means that next season, if he plays in the AHL as expected, he'll get paid a lesser amount. How much was not a part of the press release for some reason, so I don't know exactly what that is. But if somehow he were to make the NHL roster, which would likely only be due to injuries, he would make $783,333. The 2-way contract, again, in the first year, means you get a certain amount in the AHL and you would get a certain amount in the NHL. The AHL is going to be lesser than you're going to make at the NHL level. And again, he's making around $780,000 for the first year if he were in the NHL. Now, the final 2 years of the deal, he will make that $783,333 regardless if he's in the AHL or the NHL. So reading between the lines, the Kings were willing to do that, you would think, because they felt that Portillo will be in the NHL after this coming season. Less than $1 million is a very, very reasonable price for a goaltender, especially at the NHL level. the $783,330, slightly above the league minimum in the NHL, which is $750,000. So, needless to say, they're paying very little for Erik Portillo at this point. So, what is the Kings' goaltending situation now and in the near future? Well, as for the now, you probably know the Kings have Darcy Kuemper and David Rittich as the 1-2 tandem in net. You would think Kuemper might be the 1A to Rittich's 1B, but that will sort itself out. Kemper's 34 years old. It's not ancient, but certainly closer to the end than the beginning. Most number one goalies around the NHL average in their late 20s, 28, 29. That said, the Florida Panthers just won the Stanley Cup with a 35-year-old goalie in Sergei Bobrovsky. Now, Kuemper has 2 more years on his contract after this season that pays him $5.25 million per season. That's an okay amount for an average number one goalie. It's way too much to pay for a backup. It's too much to pay for a guy who's a 1A, 1B situation. If you're a solid number one goalie and you're worth something, $5-6 million, that's fair. Darcy Kuemper has been that in the past. Hasn't really been that the last couple of seasons. Will he be that again with the LA Kings? A better team in front of him, better defensive team. The thinking is, yes, he will be. And the hope is, yes, he will be. As for David Rittich, 32 years old. He's on a 1-year deal getting $1 million. Very reasonable amount for a backup. Clearly, Kuemper and Rittich are the goalies of the now and the very short-term future for the LA Kings. As for the not so distant future for the LA Kings, well, obviously they've got Erik Portillo, and he's definitely the next in line to get a shot at being the next number one goalie for the LA Kings. As far as someone, he wasn't homegrown, he wasn't drafted by the LA Kings, but he certainly, you could argue, has been developed first at the University of Michigan and now through the LA Kings system last year and this coming season. Now, he will turn 25 very soon. September the 3rd is his 25th birthday. So he's not a kid. Played 3 years of college hockey at Michigan, as we stated. Now, after this season, he'll have 2 pro seasons under his belt in the AHL. Those 5 seasons combined of development, he should be ready to go, barring any injuries, for the season after this season. If things go as expected, and again, he stays healthy, that he has at least the same type of season that he had this year in the AHL, but with a bigger workload. And it would be great if he was even a little bit better. Portillo likely to get more than the 39 starts that he made last year with the Ontario Reign. And he'll be plenty mature at that age. So he'll be, 26 next season at the start of the year. That's plenty mature enough. He's developed enough that if the timeline holds, and again, if he has a solid season this year, he should get at least an opportunity to play at the NHL level after this coming season. Now, how much he plays will depend on a variety of things. Certainly, how Darcy Kuemper fares this year will certainly factor into that, because he's likely going to be with the team for 2 more years after this season. If Kuemper plays well, then you can bring Portillo in as the backup and maybe give him a little bit more playing time than you would just a regular backup goalie, because Kuemper is going to be a little bit older. But again, all this remains to be seen. But clearly the plan for the LA Kings, and we've seen how plans go with the Cal Peterson situation, but the plan for the LA Kings is to, again, have Portillo take on a bigger role as the clear number one in the AHL this year. And then if everything goes well, like we hope, he'll be ready to go in the NHL at some point, at some level, in some role or another, either as the number 2, either as a 1A, 1B. And look, if he kills it this year in the AHL, maybe they give him a shot at being the number 1. All remains to be seen. But again, after this season, the plan clearly is in place. Erik Portillo to be on the NHL roster after this coming season. Now, is Erik Portillo the next Jonathan Quick? Well, you would certainly doubt it. Jonathan Quick obviously is the greatest goalie in Kings history and is a Hall of Famer to be. So that's asking much from him. But then again, to be honest, if you have been a Kings fan back in the day when Jonathan Quick was coming up, he was not thought to be the Kings' number one goalie. That was supposed to be Jonathan Bernier. He was the number one pick. Quick was not. Quick was thought to be, maybe he could be the backup at the NHL level. Obviously, things turned out differently, thankfully, and 2 Stanley Cups, thanks in large part to Jonathan Quick. Now, maybe Erik Portillo can be that guy. Again, you wouldn't think so, but we don't know. That would be awesome if he was, obviously. And when you look, and I've been a Kings fan, I've mentioned, for over 30 years. And when you look at the Kings' history of goaltending, obviously Rogie Vachon was very much before my time, and he's a Hall of Famer. It speaks for itself. But a lot of the goaltending for the Kings in and around Jonathan Quick was pretty mediocre. I mean, there were some guys who were okay, Kelly Rudy, guys like Felix Potvin, not bad. And then you went through Jamie Storr and Stefan Fisset, you had Martin Jones. I mentioned Jonathan Bernier, Peter Budaj was in the mix there, Jack Campbell. A lot of guys, they had their moments here and there, but on the whole, they were okay. Not, great goaltenders, but guys that you could do okay with. There were also some other names in there, Dan Cloutier, Roman Czechmanek, that were not very good, and others. But Portillo, I think it's fair to say he's trending in that a guy who could turn out to be pretty good. And hopefully if things go his way and everything works right, maybe he can be even better. But that's the plan for the LA Kings. Obviously, there was a plan with Cal Peterson. He was also a college goaltender like Erik Portillo, and that never worked out. He was a good college goalie, Cal Peterson, that never turned into a good NHL goalie. Hopefully that's not the case with Erik Portillo. But again, the LA Kings certainly locking up their future, their near future in net. Of course, they've got Hampton Slakinski, the 19-year-old. He's going to have his first season of college hockey at Western Michigan. They've got the 18-year-old Carter George that they just drafted this year, who's going back for his second full season of junior. Those guys hopefully are part of the equation down the road, but they're all down the road. They're at least 3 years away, and probably more, to be honest, than being contributors at the NHL level. So again, right now it's Erik Portillo. If things don't work out with Portillo, the Kings are going to be kind of in that scramble mode again, looking for short-term solutions in net before they can get one of these prospects to blossom and turn into a long-term solution. We've had this kind of revolving door with some veteran guys last year, Cam Talbot and David Riddick and Phoenix Copley. And then before that, we had Quick and Cal Peterson and Copley, and Jonas Korpisalo was in the mix as well. So Portillo's the hopefully the future, at least for a while, for the Kings. But again, hopefully it works out and we can have a young goaltender that can provide some stability in net for, 5-6 seasons at least down the road. But it remains to be seen. But the Kings signing Erik Portillo was the big news this weekend. Now, with the signing of Portillo, who was a restricted free agent, the Kings now have one RFA remaining that is unsigned. We will talk about that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube TV and YouTube. With a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season, Sunday afternoon, out-of-market NFL game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Of course, FanDuel is also always there for you to bet on your favorite sports, Major League Baseball, golf, soccer, NASCAR, of course, the upcoming NFL season. Join FanDuel, browse the latest betting odds to your favorite sports and teams on the Sportsbook app, and get in on all the action. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, with the signing of goalie Erik Portillo, the Kings had previously signed defenseman Jordan Spence before that. That means the Kings have one restricted free agent left, forward Arthur Kaliyev. Now, according to Puckpedia.com, the Kings have $1,321,666 in cap space remaining. Now, is that enough to sign Arthur Kaliyev? Definitely. Kaliyev was paid just over $800,000 each of the last 3 seasons, and he's not getting a raise over his performance from last year, I would not think. If the Kings, in fact, sign him. which they will do. He's a restricted free agent, so he is under team control. So he's either going to play for the Kings or no one in the NHL next season, of course, unless the Kings trade him, or unless a team were to sign him to an offer sheet. Now, it's something that is rarely done in the NHL, except that it just happened recently between the St. Louis Blues and the Edmonton Oilers. Now, maybe you're one of those fans that really doesn't pay attention to things that happen in the NHL that are not directly related to the LA Kings, and that's fine. And if you are a fan that does pay attention to that stuff, maybe at this point of the season, which is pretty much a dead kind of period for NHL news, maybe we've kind of checked out as well. So let me fill you in if you don't know. So recently, the St. Louis Blues signed Oilers defenseman Philip Broberg and forward Dylan Holloway, both restricted free agents that were unsigned by the Oilers, to offer sheets, knowing the Oilers were up against the salary cap. Now, Edmonton ultimately decided that they either couldn't or didn't want to match those offer sheets. So both Broberg and Holloway, who were going to get decent raises, and the Oilers obviously didn't want to pay him, they both left and joined the St. Louis Blues. Now, the Blues sent second and third round picks to Edmonton as compensation. So why does this matter to the LA Kings? Well, LA, like Edmonton, could not and likely would not match any offer sheet if any team wanted to make one to Arthur Kaliyev. So let's compare Arthur Kaliyev to Dylan Holloway, who was the Oilers forward who just went to St. Louis. Kaliyev turned 23 in June. Holloway's 22. Kaliyev was a second-round pick in 2019. Holloway was a first-round pick, 14th overall in 2020. Kaliyev played 51 games for the Kings this past season. He had 7 goals and 8 assists for 15 points. Holloway played 38 games for the Oilers this past season. He had 6 goals and 3 assists for 9 points. In 188 career NHL games, Arthur Kaliyev has 35 goals and 36 assists for 71 points. In 89 career NHL games, Dylan Holloway has 9 goals and 9 assists for 18 points. So the question is, why is Dylan Holloway someone a team apparently wants and Arthur Kaliyev isn't? Kaliyev is only 1 year older than Holloway. He has better career numbers both in this past season and in his career, which supposedly this past season was a bad season for him. The Blues signed Holloway to a 2-year deal worth $4.58 million. He's going to get $2.29 million per season. Now, there are still plenty of teams out there with cap space that could take a run at Arthur Kaliyev. The Ducks have $21 million in cap space. Now, if you're the Ducks, why not take a chance by signing Arthur Kaliyev? How good would it be for the Ducks to take this player that maybe the Kings haven't used properly, maybe they haven't developed properly, and for them to turn him into a legit NHL player? How would that be to rub it in our faces? I think that'd be pretty good for them. I certainly don't want that to happen. But let's just say the Ducks will give Kaliyev or sign him to a 2-year deal worth $1.5 million per season on offer sheet. He would absolutely sign that because that's a significant raise for him. And he's getting a chance on a new team. Now, the Kings almost certainly would not match that because they don't want to pay him that much money. And plus, if they do that with Arthur Kaliyev, they're going over the salary cap. And that means they'd have to get rid of a player on their current roster or somehow work it out. And they don't have any waiver exempt players right now on their roster. So they would have to expose somebody to waivers. And they don't want to do that. So they would let Arthur Kaliyev go and they would get draft pick compensation in return, probably a 4th or 5th round pick. Now, is a 4th or 5th round pick too high a price to pay to take a shot at Arthur Kaliyev? I don't think so. But apparently it is, or else somebody would have done it by now, you would think. I mean, teams are always looking for players that need that change of scenery, and maybe they get more minutes and a different role on a new team, and they can turn them into a pretty good player. So what is the explanation? Why are teams not willing to take a chance on Arthur Kaliyev? Young player. He's not old. He's not been injured. The only answer I can come up with is that Arthur Kaliyev is awful at everything else that doesn't show up on a stat sheet, because his stats aren't that bad. They're not great, but they're not that bad. But apparently his defense and his physical play, his forechecking, his passing, setting up teammates. I guess all that's so bad that it's turned teams off. I mean, I've watched him play. I don't think it's that bad. He certainly isn't a great defensive player. He certainly isn't a great forechecker. He's not a great guy at creating his own shot. But he can, when you've got a guy that can put it in the net and has an above average shot, usually teams are willing to take a chance that they can figure out the other stuff. Now, maybe there's a chance that there's something that we don't know about. Could he be just an awful teammate? Could he have some issue off the ice? It's possible, but I'm pretty sure if that was the case, we would have heard that at some point. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard anybody else report anything like that whatsoever. So it's a bit of a mystery to me as to why some team, especially like the Ducks, who have so much cap space, throwing, $3 million at a guy to take a shot at him, that's nothing for them. But I don't know. I really can't figure it out. So we've seen so many examples of teams taking a chance on a guy. Oh, he just needs a fresh start. Oh, in a new place, it'll be different, a different role, blah, blah, blah. And Arthur Kaliyev seems like he's almost that perfect kind of guy. And again, he's not old. He's young. He's put up big numbers in juniors. He's played internationally for Team USA. So it's very weird. It's very bizarre. I can't figure it out. Maybe you can. Maybe there's something I'm missing. If so, we have a fan feedback show. You can tell me. I don't know. It really is a bit baffling. Now, it could still happen. Like we said, we did see that offer sheet from St. Louis to Edmonton, not once but twice. So it's still possible, but it just seems like we're coming up on September fast, and still nothing with Arthur Kaliyev. So look, if it turns out that Artie is going to stay with the Kings and they're going to give it another shot, and maybe new head coach Jim Hiller can find a way to get Kaliyev to be a productive NHL player, great. I'd love to see it. And he's a homegrown guy. They spent a second-round pick on him. That would be the best case scenario. But as it stands right now, again, Arthur Kaliyev, the only restricted free agent left unsigned by the LA Kings. Is something going to happen between now and the start of training camp? I don't know. I would thought it would have happened by now. It hasn't happened, and it's really, really an interesting situation. All right, up next, we're going to circle back to the Kings goaltending and talk about how do they stack up against the rest of the Pacific Division. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it is easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Well, it is a slower time of the year. It was great to have some news with the Erik Portillo signing to talk to you guys about. But I'm looking for stuff to talk about. And so I kind of scan through the NHL headlines, and sometimes a light will go off in my head. And I did see today that the Vancouver Canucks, their number one goalie, Thatcher Demko, probably the best goalie in the Pacific Division right now, is likely not expected to be ready for the start of training camp. And there's speculation that he had some sort of surgery over the summer. He got hurt late in the year, was unavailable in the playoffs for Vancouver. Obviously, that was a blow to them in advancing, which they didn't go very far. But that said, he could still be ready maybe for the start of the regular season. But you would think that Vancouver is a good enough team that they'll probably be a playoff team, even if they can be cautious and not play him for maybe the first month of the season, maybe longer. But when you have some issue and they're being very secretive about it, does make you wonder if it isn't maybe worse than even we know about, and could it be something that lingers on? And again, when you've got a guy who is, I would say he's right there as an elite type goaltender, Like I said, I think he's clearly the best goalie in the Pacific. You're going to be extra careful with him. But it did make me think, looking at the tandem of goalies in the Pacific Division, where do the LA Kings stack up with Darcy Kemper and David Riddick? Well, we'll start by just letting you know who the other goalies are. And in Vancouver, the defending champs, we'll start with them. Now, when healthy, Thatcher Demko is the best goalie in the division. The Canucks do have a decent pair of backups to hold down the net until Demko is healthy, barring something really serious. They've got Casey DeSmith, and they've got last year's playoff Cinderella hero, Artur Slivos. Edmonton Oilers still have the capable but not spectacular Stuart Skinner. Calvin Pickard's their number 2. Vegas Golden Knights have Stanley Cup winner Aiden Hill, and they picked up veteran Ilya Samsonov from Toronto in the offseason. Calgary Flames are turning things over to 23-year-old Dustin Wolf to see if he's their next goalie, taking over for Jacob Markstrom, who's left. Dan Vladar will be the backup. Seattle has the capable duo of Philip Grubauer and Joey Decord. Nothing spectacular there, but they're okay. Anaheim Ducks are transitioning away from John Gibson. They're looking to turn it over to up-and-comer Lucas Dostal. And the San Jose Sharks just made the big trade for the hot AHL prospect Yaroslav Askarov from Nashville. They've got veterans Mackenzie Blackwood and Vitek Vanacek to serve as the number 2 goaltender. So all in all, I would say the Pacific Division, when it comes to the goaltending position, is just okay. It's an interesting mix of reliable veterans and a few young goalies that could be on the rise very soon. No goalie in the division has won a Vezina trophy, although Thatcher Demko did finish runner-up last season. Now, the Kings' Darcy Kemper, along with Aiden Hill of the Golden Knights, they're the only goalies in the division that have a Stanley Cup under their belt as a number 1 goalie. Obviously, Hill did it with the Vegas Golden Knights. Kemper did it a few years back with the Colorado Avalanche. Philip Grubauer was on a Stanley Cup winning team, but he was the number 2 goalie with the Washington Capitals when they won the Cup a few years back. So I think with a healthy Demko, I think you got to give it to the Vancouver Canucks as having the best goaltending in the Pacific when he's healthy. I think second would probably be the Vegas Golden Knights. Third, I think it depends. You got the Oilers and the Kings there. If Darcy Kemper can return to form and be much more of the goaltender we saw in Colorado than he was the last 2 years in Washington, I think the Kings could be in that third spot. If he doesn't, then I think the Oilers would probably be in that third spot. I'd put the Kings in fourth. And then after that, you've got the Flames, Ducks, and Sharks all looking to, get young goaltenders, get their feet wet, and probably develop them more for the future, really, than for this season. We'll see how those young goalies can handle being a number 1 netminder at the NHL level. I would say it's a transition period. It's a growing period for those 3 teams. So I've said over the past few seasons for the LA Kings, their goaltending has been okay. I think it's going to be okay again. It's certainly not a strength for the team, but I do think the Kings can win with the goalies they have, not because of them, but with them. They're good enough with the team around them to be somewhat successful, and I think certainly to be in contention for a playoff spot in the Western Conference this season. All right, that's going to do it for today's show for you everydayers, or right now you every other dayers, as we're just doing the Monday, Wednesday, Friday shows. Coming up on Wednesday, we're looking to get a special guest. Haven't finalized anything yet, so I don't want to say definitely what it's going to be, but looking for a guest on Wednesday. Of course, Friday, we will have our typical weekly Kings fan feedback show, which goes on all year round. So if you have any thoughts on today's show on the situation with Arthur Kaliev, you want to talk about Erik Portillo, are you confident that this guy could be the next guy for the LA Kings? Send us an email. We'll read it on Friday's show. The email address, as always, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And you're always welcome to post your thoughts on each show if you're watching on YouTube in the comment section, and we appreciate that. If you want to stay interactive with us on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, we are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you on Wednesday. And as always, go Kings, go.